Hey guys, I'm here with a silver level analysis from Sweden. I think that's what this player said he was from, or where this player said he was from. So we're going to be looking at a silver level Protoss player. This is on Metalopolis. His opponent is Terran, which I am going to assume he knows. So yeah, and this guy is VeritasNOR. So right now the build looks pretty normal, and this is a, I'd like to say Protoss favored map, and I mean in this matchup, Protoss versus Terran, you do want these log maps. Just in against Terran in general for Protoss and Zerg, you want these wide open maps where the Terran army has a lot of ground to traverse. So yeah, this does favor you. This is something that's not good. So notice that he started cutting probes once he put down this pylon. This is not something you ever want to do unless you are extremely worried about a rush. Like if you send out a scout very early on, then and scout is like a 6 pool, then sure, you can start cutting probes. But in this case, no, not a good idea. Yeah, so this is just one thing to just start off. You want to really master those basic build orders, and this is another thing, going to Forge directly after this gateway went down, right when he had the money for it. Notice that he's only now getting up to that 10 supply, something that he should have gotten a good 30 seconds ago, at least. Probably a little bit more, actually maybe more like a minute. And yeah, putting down a second pylon over here, no, your economy's not that good at all. It's going to take much longer for this to be fully developed, and we'll actually see this kind of as a recurring theme. Not really, but it's actually a minor theme in this game, but it's not a major issue. Okay, first Zealot now going to come out. So why do you not want to put down this forge right after this gateway? So first off, your economy isn't going to be that good right following this, and most importantly, it's going to cripple your gas intake. So there's a lot of money going into this forge that should be probes, and just look at this probe count right now. He's got, yeah, less probes than his opponent has SCVs, and if you are Zerg or Protoss, you always want to have more workers, at least in the first few minutes against Terran, because Zerg, of course, you can produce multiple drones at once. With Protoss, you have that chrono boost, and you can, I mean, using at least 1 or 2 on your Nexus won't really hurt in the early game. And more Zealots not coming out, and I also don't like this choice. And now a cannon going up, so I just really don't like this build. Going this forge super early, this cannon isn't going to be doing much at all, especially considering he doesn't have a scout out. He doesn't even know where his opponent is right now. And we'll get that vision. He didn't send out a probe after the first pylon. He didn't send it out after the gateway or the forge went down. So he doesn't know where his opponent is. He just knows that his opponent is Terran, and his opponent knows where he is. So it looks like this timing can be a lot more refined as well. He had 500 minerals. By the time this core went down, he still doesn't have gas. This chrono boost is full, and this probe count's still pretty low. 11 probes. Well, 12, I guess. 4 Zealots, okay. Alright, now going to grab both gases. Sure. And even going to use up some of that chrono boost and queue up some more probes. That's good. Remember, the ideal number of probes, or any workers really, well, I guess it's a little different for Terran because of those mules, but 30 is the number of workers until each base is fully saturated, so that is 3 times the amount of mineral patches, which should be 8 on most maps. So I guess it'd be a little bit different for the golds, but yeah, that'll be 24 because you've got 8 patches, ignore those 3, and then you want 3 on each gas, so that's plus 6, so that's 30 in total. And here he only has, okay, looks like he's got about half of that. Actually, going to take this expansion over here. So on Metalopolis, you don't want to be expanding before your opponent, before scouting out your opponent. So if your opponent knows where you are and you don't know where they are, you shouldn't ever feel safe taking an expansion. I mean, just knowing what they are, the race helps, but you want to know their position, because if he was, say, if his Terran opponent was cross-positioned, yeah, he could have easily expanded. He could have taken this gold even. But taking it over here when they are across like this, it's going to make it very difficult to hold. In theory, it's actually not going to come up very much in this game, but most better players will scout this out eventually, probably pretty quickly. if they do have a dedicated scout, so they will be able to put a lot of pressure over here, and you're just going to be stretched so thin because you have to defend this area and you have to defend this area, and there's a big gap between these guys. I guess it's not too much of a problem for, say, Zerg with those speedlings, with that creep, but for Protoss, and well, Terran especially, I guess. But for Protoss, it's really not that much better. This is good, getting that weapons upgrade, although he's not using the gas for much at all. Let's check. Okay, it looks like these gases are fully saturated. Still pretty light on this, on the mineral probes. Let's check that out. Yeah, this is, what, 12? So, you do want to be getting at least, probably at least 16. I'd feel most comfortable around 20-24. Looks like the suspension is now up. And look at this harvester count. Still, again, it's just lower than his Terran opponent, even though his opponent is on one base and therefore working on the working off the single nexus. Also, not really using those gases. Putting down some more gateways, sure, that's a good idea. So, let's talk about scouting. So, Veritas still doesn't know where his opponent is. Looks like he's sending out a scout now, so that's good. But 9 minutes into the game, no, you want to be doing that in the first minute or so. Maybe a little bit later, I guess. If you're Terran, you can probably afford it if you do that earlier wall off. But you do want to be getting out a scout just as soon as you possibly can. Yeah, there we go. The probe finally knows where, well, even though it's not completely certain, yeah. But he has a fairly good idea. And this base would be in danger, but it looks like, yeah, our Terran opponent is just going to walk right past it. So, if he was just a little bit more thorough, there's really not much at all that Veritas could have done to defend that base. So his army is actually a lot weaker in the open, and yeah, this choke is certainly going to help him. This cannon's also going to help, although I would prefer if they were actual units. Well, it looks like he will be able to defend this here. Just those hardier Protoss units, definitely going to help it against that. And if he's paying attention, he'll know that he'll notice that there was only the single tank, which means probably only one factory. Yeah, with the tech lab. And the Marines do have the shield, but running away the probes is unnecessary against, what, 2 Marines? Yeah, you're gonna lose, like, 2 probes max. And I think the mining time is actually better if you just keep the guys mining. I mean, obviously that's better, but you should make up for it just by having your guys mining. The sensor tower is a kind of clever idea, although it's poorly positioned. The money's starting to queue up, although he's supply blocked. There we go. So, another thing that Veritas has done is tech up. He's on 2 bases, and again, that's going to come back to that income. So, 28, still not enough to completely fully saturate a single base, and normally I really wouldn't be complaining about this too much, but it's because he expanded so early to this distant position where it's going to be hard to defend both areas at once. So, yeah, that's just something there, and doing such an early build, getting that forge down so early, putting down that gateway before his 10th probe, just, it's really inflicted a lot of damage on his own economy. Another push going to come in here, but Veritas should be able to hold this off. Yeah, there we go. Even going to focus down some tanks. Oh, something that I wanted to mention that I noticed when I was watching this earlier. Look at these control groups. They're non-existent. There's one control group, I think, at the very end, but control group's super important. So, first off, you don't need to bother control grouping your warp gates, because that's what the W key is for. So, the Nexus, the Nexi, I guess, very important to control group. Maybe you want to get this army control groups. Probably want to get, well, I don't know. No, probably not the Forge, not the Cybercore, not super important. But when he puts down some more, the robo bays, or the robo facilities, he's going to want to control group those, although he doesn't, which we'll see later on. And something that I was mentioning in some of my other analyses is being a little bit more active with these units. So, this positioning is okay, but I mean, they're here defensively, right? So you want to defend your bases, and this is a pretty solid position. You leave yourself pretty open at your own, at your main's ramp, but you can reinforce fairly easily because you have all these warp gates, and you do have a few kins, at least for a little bit of defense there. But, I mean, you're not super secure there, but if there's just like a marine or two, you'll be fine. So over here, yeah, you're going to defend your second base very easily, but you do the exact same thing, or at least you'd be in a, well, you wouldn't be in a better position, but you'd be in a pretty nice position if you were just winning right outside his base, right outside your opponent's natural, or your opponent's main ramp. So, yeah, there we go. This gives you scouting information for one, although he's going into attack, which probably isn't, well, it's okay, he has an overwhelming amount of units, but, yeah, that's really the only thing going for him. And it's enough. I mean, an overwhelming amount of units is what Zerg is pretty much based on, but this wall is usually a bit tougher to break. Upgrades are pretty nice right now. Let's see, I think, yeah. One, working on the shields. I generally prefer armor, but yeah, go ahead and do shields. And he doesn't have a, oh, he does have a power cancel, so actually weapons would be preferable. Weapons 2, that is, and this first row facility is at, and again, nothing control group down here. This power cancel is out now, so blink I think is a priority over charge. Well, no, not so much over here. So, well, there's not a ton of marines. There's actually more marauders, I think. Yeah, looks like it's about even. Slightly more marauders. So, yeah, charge and blink both. Decent ideas. Storm would be nice. So going for that Templar Archives, getting that Storm certainly would be nice against these marines in particular. And that's something that you really need to acknowledge when you're going up against this bio build. So we've seen mostly marines, mostly marauders, and a few tanks here and there. The marines, very susceptible to that storm, or Colossus would be a very good choice. He's actually going for Immortals here. Immortals, I really don't like them against bio. They're great against the marauders, but the marines really absolutely counter them. So, looks like this macro leaves a little bit to be desired. Just, well, he threw away an army, I guess, so that's kind of excusable. Oh, I guess let's talk about why you should be taking your natural instead of, or if you're going to throw a base out here, you should just go for the gold, or go for the much easier to defend natural. So I've been talking about this a little bit. You're spread pretty thin. You have to defend this wide ramp. Sometimes, if your opponent has air, you're going to have to consider defending over here, and even back here as well. And, of course, all around the side. The building placement, not the greatest. It's okay. It's not a major thing. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's okay. I mean, you want pylons across this raid as much as you can, but that's, most of the time, that's not going to be a really big issue. Okay, so back to this natural. Looks like he's expanding again, actually. And, you know, if you're going to expand down here, if you're looking to take hidden expansions, yeah, the gold is going to be suspected, but if you have a decent army and your opponent is too afraid to move out, why not take the gold? You're going to force him to move out when he's not comfortable.